I faked my boss's husband for a year, but ended up falling for her. When my CEO pulled me aside and asked me to be her fake husband for an entire year, the dumb, impulsive question that slipped out of my mouth was, "Do we have to share a bed?" Yeah, I actually said that. Straight to the woman every single person in our company feared. My name is Ethan Reed. I'm 28 years old. I grew up in a tiny, dusty rural town in rural Oklahoma, and I've spent the last 5 years grinding alone in downtown Chicago. I work as a senior copy assistant at Bright Horizon Marketing, a fancy title that sounds like I'm some award-winning creative genius, but the truth is far less glamorous. I sit in a drab gray cubicle all day, churning out generic ad slogans and social media captions that most people scroll past without a second glance. Every morning, I squeeze onto a crowded commuter train full of half-asleep office workers. I rotate the same handful of faded old teas, grab cheap gas station coffee, and spend my workdays rewriting craft beer marketing lines for the 10th time in a single week. My personal life is even messier. I rent a rundown studio apartment in a sketchy part of River North. The paint peels off the walls in huge chunks, my AC rattles so loud it keeps me up at night, and my neighbor's dog barks nonstop for no reason. Most nights, I survive on takeout burgers, stare at my laptop till midnight, and send every spare dollar I earn back home to my mom. She's 62, living alone in our old family house back in Oklahoma. My dad spent his whole life fixing semi-trucks to support our family until his body completely broke down. Last year, he was diagnosed with late-stage lung cancer, and the medical bills crashed down on us like a tidal wave. We drained every penny we had, but it was never enough. After he passed, the invoices never stopped. I took out every loan I qualified for, maxed out every credit card I owned, and did everything I could just to keep my mom's house from getting foreclosed on. Now I'm drowning in over $70,000 of debt, a weight that sits on my chest every single second of every day. 2 weeks before everything changed, my landlord slid an eviction notice under my door. I was 3 months behind on rent, and there were no more extensions, no more payment plans. I took random freelance gigs, sold my vintage camera I'd kept since high school, and even texted old college friends I hadn't spoken to in years. Every reply was the same: "Sorry, I can't help." By that chaotic Monday morning, I was hanging on by a thread. I showed up to work exhausted after an all-nighter, my head throbbing. My inbox was flooded with overdue medical bills, maxed credit card statements, and a final eviction warning. The words blurred together in front of my eyes until a new email popped up out of nowhere. No subject, just one line: "Report to my office at 9 a.m. sharp." Signed, Sloan Voss. Sloan is our company's CEO, the founder's daughter, and my direct boss. The entire staff secretly calls her the Ice Queen. She always wears sharp, tailored power suits, has a sleek dark bob, and her sharp gray eyes can make seasoned senior executives stumble over their words mid-meeting. She never joins after-work drinks, never chats in the break room, and walks through the office like she owns every inch of the building, because her family does. In 5 years, we've barely spoken. She never wastes words on small talk. I had zero idea why she wanted a private meeting. At 8:59 a.m., I stood outside her 36th floor glass office. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the entire Chicago skyline, clean minimalist decor, cold and luxurious. I knocked. "Come in." Her voice was crisp, emotionless. She sat behind her massive executive desk, staring at her laptop, not bothering to stand up. She simply gestured to the chair across from her. "Sit." My palms were sweating. I was fully prepared to get fired. Instead, she closed her laptop, slid a thick manila folder across the desk, and said 4 words that flipped my entire life upside down. "Open it, now." I flipped it open, and my stomach dropped straight to my feet. Inside was every single private detail of my ruined life. My dad's full medical records, my negative bank statements, my wrecked credit report, even a scanned copy of my eviction notice. My throat went dry. "How did you get this?" "I had my assistant run a discreet background check," she said flatly, like she was reading a grocery list. "You're bankrupt, Ethan. No savings, insurmountable debt, 3 months behind on rent. You'll be homeless in 30 days. I burned with frustration. "This is my personal life. What does this have to do with my job?" "Nothing," she answered immediately. "I brought you here to make a proposal." I stared at her, completely confused. "A proposal?" She leaned back in her leather chair and sized me up like I was a business investment. Before my father passed away, he set up a family trust with ironclad legal terms. To keep my company shares and my CEO position, I am legally required to be married by the end of this year and maintain that marriage for 12 full consecutive months. If I fail, every ounce of company control transfers to my younger brother, Jax. I knew Jax Voss. Everyone at the office knew him. He always wore designer suits, had a perfect practice smile, but his eyes were cold and calculating. The entire company whispered that he'd been waiting years to take Sloan's position, and he'd destroy anyone standing in his way. "I'm not letting him steal everything I've built," Sloan said firmly, "but I refuse to marry someone for real just to satisfy a trust clause." "That's where you come in." I blinked in shock. "Me? I need a paper husband for exactly 12 months, she explained without hesitation. invitation. We get legally married, move in together, attend all company events and family functions as a married couple. After 1 year, we file a clean, no strings divorce. You get zero claim to my assets. We keep separate bank accounts, separate finances. In return, I pay off every single dollar of your debt. All medical bills, all back rent, all credit card debt gone. And when the year ends, you get a $100,000 cash payout to restart your life. The office went dead silent. I could hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. This is insane, I muttered. You don't even know me. Her gaze never wavered. I know enough. I've watched you for years. You show up on time. You never start office drama. You don't gossip. You don't overstate your achievements. Even drowning in debt, you still do every job perfectly. You're loyal, steady, and you have everything to lose if you break the deal. But it's still a marriage, I argued. Everyone will talk. Your family, the board, HR. What do I tell my mom? We'll have a consistent backstory, she replied calmly. HR is already briefed. Upper management knows I'm dating an internal employee to avoid policy conflicts. Your reviews will be handled by a different manager to avoid bias. All we need is a perfect public image, and I've mastered image control my entire career. I'm not forcing you to decide now, she said after a pause. If you say no, I shred this folder, and we forget this conversation forever. If you say yes, both our lives change completely. I stared at the debt numbers, my dad's name on every bill, the eviction notice giving me 10 days to leave my apartment. I asked the question that haunted me long after. What are the ground rules for private life? Do we have to share a bed? For the first time all morning, a flicker of surprise crossed her cold features. Then, shockingly, she laughed, a short, genuine sound. No, we do not have to share a bed. I left her office with shaky legs. The entire workday blurred. My mind kept replaying every word of that crazy deal. That night, I paced my tiny rundown apartment until sunrise. My pride screamed that this was selling out. But my reality screamed louder. My mom's house, my entire future, was hanging by a thread. At 9 a.m. the next day, I walked back into her office. I'll do it, I said. I'll be your husband for 12 months. Relaxation softened her rigid shoulders. She pulled out a formal contract and slid it across the desk. Sign. As I wrote my name, I could feel my old, broken life fading away. But I had no idea if I just saved myself or tied myself to a complicated, irreversible future. That same afternoon, my world flipped entirely. Sloan slid a private elevator key card and an envelope across her desk. My penthouse address. Pack your essentials. A driver will pick you up at 5 p.m. sharp. That fast? I asked. The sooner we build our married routine, the more natural we look for my family and the board, she replied. All business, no warmth, no small talk. Packing took barely any time. My entire life fit into 2 suitcases, worn tees, jeans, old books, my beat-up laptop, and one framed photo of my parents standing in front of my dad's old truck, smiling like their future was endless. I stared at the faint poster outline on my apartment wall. This tiny place was never home, but it was all I had. For a second, I almost canceled the deal. Then I thought of my mom's house, the piles of bills, the eviction notice. At 5 p.m., a black luxury SUV pulled up. The driver knew my name. The ride downtown felt like a one-way trip to a completely different world. Sloan's penthouse occupied the entire top floor of Chicago's glass downtown skyscraper. The private elevator only worked with her key card. When the doors opened, I stepped into a magazine-perfect open-concept space, floor-to-ceiling skyline windows, crisp white walls, huge gray leather sectional, zero clutter and zero warmth. Sloan stood by the kitchen island in a simple blouse and slacks, still carrying that poised, boardroom-ready energy. Your bedroom is the second door on the left down the hall, she instructed. Walk-in closet, private ensuite bathroom, entirely your space. We'll stage the place over the next few days, photos, mixed mail, small household details, to make it look like we've lived together for months. I stared out at the entire Chicago skyline stretching below us. This place is massive. It's practical, she said flatly, close to the office, 24/7 security. To me, it felt like a cold glass cage high above the city. She handed me a thick binder. Read this tonight. Memorize everything. I opened it and froze. It was a full rulebook for our fake marriage, exact standing distance at galas, hand placement in couple photos, scripted answers for how we met, even the proper way to hold a wine glass at formal events. This is extreme, I said. Jax is hunting for every inconsistency, she replied sharply. One mistake, one slip-up, and he'll destroy me. The backstory was printed clearly in bullet points. We'd met 6 months prior at a Lake Michigan charity gala, hit it off instantly, kept our relationship secret to avoid office gossip, then had a private small wedding with only family present. Part of my family knows the outline, Sloan explained. My mom Mom's surprised but happy. The extended family and board will demand proof soon. We need to be flawless. I looked up at her. What about my mom? Tell her whatever you're comfortable with, she said. But understand this, if our fake marriage gets exposed, we both lose everything. You're not a prop, Ethan. Your future is tied to mine now. The first night living together was incredibly awkward. I unpacked my basic clothes into her huge empty closet, feeling out of place in the luxury penthouse. We ate takeout sushi in silence while she answered work emails nonstop. At 10 p.m., she said a quick goodnight and retreated to her master suite. I lay awake for hours, listening to the quiet hum of the building AC, no creaky pipes, no neighbor noise, just peaceful, empty silence. We quickly fell into a routine. Every morning, we rode the elevator down together. If anyone was in the lobby, she'd subtly lean close, brush her arm against mine, selling the affectionate married vibe. The second we stepped into the office lobby, we snapped right back into strict boss and employee mode. At work, she was the untouchable CEO. I was the quiet cubicle copywriter. In meetings, I had to fight not to stare at the woman I went home to every night. We usually came home at different times. Some nights I'd walk in to find her blazer thrown over the couch, heels kicked off by the door. Other nights, I'd hear her pacing the living room mid-intense business call, her voice low and dominant, a side no one at the office ever saw. Our first big public test was the company's annual black tie charity gala at a downtown 5-star hotel. Sloan had a custom gown delivered for herself and a perfectly tailored suit ordered for me. When I stood in front of the mirror, I barely recognized the sharp, put-together stranger staring back. Then Sloan walked out of her room and I completely lost my train of thought. She wore a sleek black floor-length gown, diamond drop earrings, her hair pulled back to highlight her sharp features. She looked elegant, powerful, but for the first time, human. Ready? She asked. I swallowed hard. I hope so. The second we stepped into the ballroom, every head turned. Sloan slipped her arm through mine naturally, her hand resting lightly on my suit sleeve. Keep a soft smile, she murmured quietly, not looking at me. Stay relaxed. We wove through crowds of executives, investors, and clients. I shook dozens of hands, repeated our Lake Michigan gala meet cute story on loop, laughed at boring corporate jokes on cue. We met at a charity event 6 months ago, I said smoothly every time. She spilled her drink on my shirt. I've never stopped thinking about her since. Everyone laughed. Everyone believed us. We looked like the perfect, wealthy, happily married power couple. Then Jax appeared out of the crowd like a shadow. Taller than me, sharp jawline, expensive suit, perfect fake smile, cold calculating eyes. Well, he drawled, stopping directly in front of us. So you're the lucky guy who finally cracked my sister's impenetrable shell. I extended my hand. His grip was crushing, intentionally dominant. Ethan Reed, I said calmly. I know exactly who you are, he smirked. Low-level copywriter, humble background, fast-tracked straight into the Voss family circle. My sister moves incredibly fast when she wants something. Sloane's hand tightened slightly on my arm, a silent warning. When you meet the right person, she replied coolly, there's no reason to waste time. Jax turned back to me, his tone falsely friendly but menacing underneath. We'll have to grab drinks sometime, just us guys. I'd love to get to know you better. The hair on the back of my neck stood up. I knew he only wanted one thing, dirt. Proof our marriage was fake. Back at the penthouse late that night, Sloan poured herself a glass of red wine, something she never did in front of me. He doesn't believe a single second of our act, she said, staring out at the city lights. He's determined to find proof this is a contract scam to void the trust. Then we don't give him any proof, I said. She looked at me then, really looked at me. For the first time, her gray eyes weren't cold and hard. They were tired, vulnerable, worn thin from years of fighting alone. You were amazing tonight, she said softly. You looked completely natural, completely at home. You didn't flinch once when Jax tried to provoke you. I laughed lightly, trying to downplay it. It's just the suit. It's not, she disagreed firmly. You handled every high-pressure moment with grace. That's what sells this marriage, not fancy clothes. That simple, genuine praise hit me harder than I expected. I'd spent years being overlooked, undervalued, stuck at the bottom of the corporate ladder. For once, someone saw my effort. As weeks turned into months, Sloane's icy walls slowly started to crack. One late night, I woke up thirsty and walked into the dim living room. Only one lamp was on. Sloane was slumped on the couch, laptop open on her thighs, one hand pressing hard against her temples, clearly suffering from a brutal tension headache after hours of overtime work. You okay? I asked quietly. She jolted slightly, caught off guard, her perfect CEO mask dropping completely. For a split second, she wasn't the fearless company leader, just an exhausted, overworked woman in plain loungewear. I'm fine, she automatically replied, then sighed heavily. Just too much corporate pressure right now. I poured her a glass of water and set it on the coffee table in front of her. Take a break, I said. You've been staring at that screen for hours. She smiled faintly, a real, tired smile. Surprisingly, she asked about my mom. How's she doing? I froze. I'd only mentioned her in passing once, months ago. I never thought she'd pay attention. She's holding on, I said quietly, pretending she's fine all alone back home. You miss her a lot, she said, not asking, stating. Every day. Her gaze softened. I know what that's like, missing someone who's still alive, but far away. In that quiet moment, the penthouse stopped being a stage for our fake marriage. It started feeling like a safe space, a home. But our biggest test was still ahead. Sloan received an email, a private family weekend gathering at the Voss family's countryside estate in Lake Geneva. Every family member, every board member, and Jax would all be there. Her jaw tightened as she read it. They're expecting us to act like a loving newlywed couple, she said. And the estate only has one guest bedroom set aside for us. One bed, no separate rooms this time. My heart skipped a beat. Jax will be watching our every move the entire weekend, she added. He's waiting for one mistake. The drive to the countryside was quiet and tense. The second we pulled up to the massive stone mansion, my stomach twisted. I was about to share a bed with my fake wife, in front of her entire suspicious family. I had no idea the line between fake and real would blur completely that weekend. The estate looked like a luxury movie set, stone exterior, long driveway, perfectly manicured lawns, expensive cars lined up out front. Sloan walked beside me, her arm linked firmly through mine, grounding both of us. Remember, she whispered. We're comfortable, we're married, we belong here. The front door opened before we could knock. A woman in her 60s with gentle yet sharp eyes stood in the doorway, Sloane's mom. Ethan, she smiled warmly. Welcome home. Sloane's tone softened completely, a sweetness I'd never heard at work. Hi, Mom. Inside, the entire family and board members were gathered. The second we walked in, every conversation died. Jax walked straight toward us, that fake warm smile on his face. Finally get to meet the man who stole my sister's heart, he said, turning to me. Hope her insane work schedule hasn't scared you off. I shook his hand, enduring his oppressive grip. It hasn't. She inspires me to work harder. A board member laughed and asked the question we'd rehearsed 100 times. How did you two meet? I glanced at Sloan, got her tiny nod, and delivered our script naturally. Lake Michigan Charity Gala, 6 months back, I said. She ran straight into me and spilled her entire drink on my shirt. I thought to myself, I need to know this bold, unapologetic woman. The room laughed. Sloan rolled her eyes playfully, a rare, genuine casual reaction no one at work ever saw. You're exaggerating, she teased. But yes, that's where our story started. And you moved so fast to marry, a relative asked skeptically. I turned to Sloan, and before I could think, my words stopped being a script. When you meet the right person, you don't waste time hesitating, I said softly, looking straight into her eyes. Life's too short to pretend you don't need someone. Sloane's fingers tightened around mine. For a split second, the room disappeared. It was just us. Over dinner, Jax kept throwing subtle, sharp jabs disguised as jokes. Pretty lucky jump from a small-town kid to the Voss family, he said. Feels like winning the lottery, doesn't it? I held his gaze steady, no hesitation. I'm lucky, I admitted, but not for the money. I'm lucky to know your sister. She's the strongest person I've ever met. Being with her makes me want to be better. The table went completely quiet. All eyes widened. Even Sloan stared at me in quiet shock. Jax's smile dropped for a split second before he recovered. After dinner, staff led us to the master guest suite at the end of the hall, spacious, cozy, fireplace, thick carpet, and only one large king bed. Just like she'd warned me. Well, I said awkwardly, trying to lighten the tension. At least it's a big bed. Sloan sat on the edge of the mattress, her shoulders finally slumping after a full day of performing. All her strength faded away. Jax won't stop, she whispered tiredly. He'll keep looking for a way to take everything from me. I sat beside her, keeping a respectful distance but close enough to let her feel my presence. You don't have to fight alone anymore, Sloan, I said firmly. I started this as a contract, but I'm on your side now, fully. She lifted her eyes to mine, vulnerable and unsure. Do you mean that? Every word. She stared at me for a long moment, searching for lies, finding only honesty. Slowly, carefully, she reached out and took my hand. Her fingers were cold and slightly trembling. Thank you. The air between us crackled with tension. All the fake lines, all the contract rules, all the professional boundaries blurred completely away. Then she asked the question that changed everything. If there was no contract, no trust, no money, would you still be here with me tonight? My answer came instantly, without hesitation. I would. She hesitated only a second before leaning in. I met her halfway. The kiss was soft, unsure at first, then deeper. No performance, no audience, no script. Just two people who'd been pretending for so long they'd forgotten what real feeling was like. We fell asleep tangled together by the dying fireplace light. In the quiet darkness, she whispered against my chest, "This isn't in the contract." "Nope," I murmured, holding her tighter. "No regrets though." "Me neither." I woke up the next morning with her head resting on my chest, sunlight streaming through the curtains. For a sleepy second, I thought this was our real life, normal, peaceful, ours. Then Sloane jolted upright, her gaze locking sharply on the vanity beside the bed. A tiny black dot hidden in the corner. A miniature wireless camera, its red light flickering faintly. My stomach dropped. Sloane's voice turned ice cold with rage. Jax, he bugged our room? I asked in disbelief. He's been waiting for proof our marriage is fake, she said, hands shaking with anger. He planned to catch us sleeping separately, arguing, acting like strangers. I looked at the camera, then at her. Well, I said quietly, he got the exact opposite. She stared at me, realization dawning in her eyes. He filmed us kissing, us holding each other. He wanted evidence of a fake marriage, I said. Instead, he has footage of us being real. But we both knew it wouldn't stop Jax. He'd twist it, weaponize it, try to destroy us anyway. The ride back to the city was silent and heavy. The camera sat between us and the cup holder like a ticking time bomb. Days later, chaos exploded. Sloane's assistant forwarded a massive file dump Jax had sent to every board member, my old debt records, our original marriage contract scan, blurry screenshots of us kissing in the estate bedroom, all timestamped perfectly. He's calling it corporate fraud, Sloane said, exhausted beyond measure. He's demanding a full board vote to remove me as CEO. The penthouse turned tense and suffocating overnight. Sloane barely slept, pacing the living room every night, fighting to save everything she'd built. One evening, I found her standing alone at the floor-to-ceiling windows, arms wrapped tightly around herself, the city lights glinting off the glass. For the first time, she looked small, fragile, scared. I'm terrified, Ethan, she whispered brokenly. I've lost so much in my life, opportunities, people I loved. I can handle losing the company, but I can't lose you. Her words crashed over me. I stepped forward and pulled her into my arms firmly. You will never lose me, I promised. I'm here for you, not the contract, not the money. You. She buried her face in my chest, holding back tears. If this blows up, everyone will call you a gold digger, a scammer. You'll lose your career, your reputation. I don't care what anyone says, I told her. We know the truth. The day of the quarterly board meeting arrived. We dressed quietly, side by side. Sloane in a sharp dark blazer and simple white blouse, me in my gala suit. In the elevator, she squeezed my hand once. No matter what happens, we don't turn on each other. Promise me. I promise. The boardroom was cold, bright, and deadly quiet. All directors sat lined up, watching us with sharp, judgmental eyes. Jax sat at the far end, smug and confident, folders stacked high in front of him. Routine business dragged on endlessly, nothing but noise to me, until Jax finally stood up. Final agenda item, CEO credibility and corporate fraud investigation. The lights dimmed. The projector turned on. First, he displayed our original fake marriage contract, highlighting every clause, my debt, the one-year term, the payout agreement. This is not a marriage, Jax announced loudly. This is a paid transaction. My sister lied to this board, lied to our family trust, and hired an employee to fake a spousal relationship solely to steal company control. Next, he showed my old overdue bills, my bankruptcy history, painting me as a desperate, money-hungry liar. Finally, he played the bedroom camera footage, us kissing, holding each other, vulnerable and quiet in the dim light. The entire boardroom gasped. Even their intimate moments are scripted performance. Jax shouted, this is calculated fraud. Sloane Voss cannot lead this company. The room fell dead silent. All eyes locked on Sloane. She stood slowly, steady and unshaken, and faced the entire board. Everything he said about the contract is true, she admitted openly. I did start this marriage as a business deal to protect my company from my brother's takeover. Jax smirked, thinking he'd won. But Sloane kept going, her voice clear and unwavering. But what started as a contract turned real. I hired a man who was honest, loyal, and hardworking even when he had nothing left. I watched him care for his family silently, work diligently without reward, treat everyone around him with kindness. He didn't chase my money or my status. He saw me, the tired, stressed woman behind the CEO title. And somewhere along the way, I fell in love with him. The room erupted in quiet murmurs. Jax scoffed. Sentiment doesn't erase fraud. I stood up then, my legs steady, my voice clear and strong for every person in that room to hear. I was desperate when I signed that contract, I admitted. I was drowning in family medical debt, days away from homelessness. I thought it was just a transaction. I turned and looked straight at Sloane, then back at the board. But I watched Sloane fight every single day to protect this company, protect her employees, carry an entire family legacy alone while her own brother plotted against her. I watched her cry privately over her father's passing, push through endless burnout, and still treat every person on her team with fairness. I didn't stay for money. I stayed for her. I love her, not her title, not her company, just her. The room went completely silent. Jax's confident smile shattered completely. Before he could speak again, a calm voice cut through the room. Enough. Sloane's mother stood up from her seat at the back of the room. I knew about the contract from the very beginning, she revealed. I let Sloane make her choice, because I wanted her to learn that control isn't everything in life. She turned to Jax, her tone firm and disappointed. But you secretly bugged a private bedroom, leaked intimate family footage, and tried to destroy your own sister for power. That is not leadership. That is cruelty and greed. She faced the board members directly. You have all seen Sloane's years of dedication to this company. You have seen Jax's ruthless sabotage. Vote wisely for who deserves to lead us. The voting began immediately. The result was unanimous. Jax's motion to remove Sloane was completely denied. All of Jax's executive authority was stripped permanently. He was removed from all company leadership roles. The meeting dispersed quickly, everyone either offering quiet congratulations or avoiding our eyes awkwardly. Sloane's mom hugged her tightly, then turned to me with sincere gratitude. Thank you for standing by her. We walked out into the empty hallway together, away from the crowd and chaos. We did it, I said quietly, my voice shaking with relief. Sloane looked at me, eyes glistening with happy tears, and laughed a broken, beautiful laugh. We did. You know, our contract is almost up. We could split up cleanly, no penalties, all your debt cleared. This is the outcome you originally wanted. My heart tightened. I stepped closer to her, leaving no space between us. That's not what I want anymore, I said firmly. Let's end the contract, and stay married for real. A tear slid down her cheek, and I wiped it away gently with my thumb. She smiled softly. Do you remember your first question to me in my office? I laughed quietly. About sharing a bed? I said no back then, she whispered, pressing her hand over her heart. I thought distance would keep us safe. But if you asked me now? She looked straight into my eyes, full of love and certainty. I'd say yes. I want every bed, every morning, every hard day and every peaceful night with you. Not for 1 year, for always. Months later, we sold the cold downtown penthouse and bought a small, quiet house with a backyard patio in a peaceful neighborhood on the city outskirts. Simple, humble, entirely ours. My debt was fully gone. I left the corporate marketing world for a small, warm creative studio where people knew me for my work, not my wife's last name. Sloane still ran the company, but she learned to slow down, to rest, to stop carrying every burden alone. We had dinner together every night, no more endless midnight overtime. One calm sunset evening, we sat together on our backyard swing, mugs of coffee in hand, watching the sky turn pink and gold. If you could go back to that first office day, Sloane asked quietly, would you still sign the contract? I wrapped my arm around her shoulders and pulled her close, smiling softly. I'd sign it faster, I told her truthfully. That fake marriage was just the start of me finding the real love of my life. She leaned her head on my shoulder, lacing her fingers tightly through mine. We started as a transaction, a fake contract, a deal to save each other's lives and careers. But now, there's no more acting, no more pretending, no more rules. I once agreed to fake marry my boss for just 1 year. Now I plan on loving her for every single year after.